Now we return to our program with a forward-looking conversation on AI's role across next-generation satellite operations. This session is sponsored by ST Engineering iDirect, and we'll first play a short sponsored video. Following the video, please welcome moderator Negar Feher, joined by Senhaji, Hua-Lung Tsai, Behzad, Koosha, and Arvin Master.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, hopefully right after lunch and food coma. And I'm here to wake you all up. I'm Negar, the CEO and one of the co-founders of Spacedock. We are a space startup working on making space more plug-and-play, autonomous with AI-enabled interfaces. And I'm excited today to tell you more about how AI will be changing the next phase of space operations with my lovely panelist here, which I'm going to introduce in a minute. And we'd love to engage with all of you on this topic. It's a very exciting topic, and I'm sure you have a million questions about it. So feel free to engage, put questions, and I'll try to get to as many of everybody's questions as we possibly can. Okay, so what we're going to explore today in our conversation is how is AI today reshaping mission architectures and the way we do operations in space and value creation across our ecosystem? It's not just how are we changing our existing workflows, but how are we redefining how you even define a system and a mission in space going forward? And AI is quickly transforming our industry from being an experimental role to more of an operational role. And it's going to catalyze a paradigm shift that we're already seeing in our industry from, the cost of access to space being shattered, and now it's going to enable the next wave of innovation in space that we will discuss briefly here, and how it's going to enable things like dynamic mission planning, cloud infrastructure, data systems, how it's transforming the ground infrastructure, and more. And with that, I'd love to introduce my panelists here. I have Senhaji, who's the Senior Director of Corporate Development at ST Engineering iDirect. He leads the strategic initiatives for ST Engineering iDirect, a global leader in satellite communications and ground infrastructure. He drives partnerships and growth across emerging connectivity markets, focusing on how AI and adaptive networks can unlock new efficiencies in mission architectures. Next, we have Dr. Hua-Lung Tsai, who is the Deputy Division Director of ITRI, which is the Industrial Technology Research Institute. Dr. Tsai leads R&D efforts in long-range communication and video processing technologies at ITRI. It's Taiwan's foremost applied research institute, and his team is at the forefront of developing edge computing, which I'm sure you're all already using and interested in applying going forward, and AI-enabled communication frameworks for both terrestrial and space systems. Next, we have Behzad, who's our Vice President of Business Development for International Affairs at Sidus Space. He oversees Sidus's global partnerships and commercialization strategy. He has a background in aerospace systems and international business, and he focuses on expanding Sidus's presence in AI-driven small satellite and on-orbit services market. And last but not least, we have Arvind Mathur, who's the executive in residence at AWS, Amazon's web services. He brings over 2 decades of experience in cloud infrastructure and digital transformation. And at AWS, he focuses on enabling aerospace and defense customers to leverage AI, cloud, and edge computing for mission-critical space operations. So thank you all. I did the intros on your behalf so we can get to the meat of the matter very quickly. But thank you for being here. And thank you all for participating in this. So hopefully we can make it as interactive as possible. So as I was saying at the beginning, AI is not an accessory anymore. It's going to be a critical part of space infrastructure going forward and be, thread into the operating fabric of it itself. And as our launch costs are coming down, orbital activity is accelerating, our space ecosystem is growing exponentially, even if you look year over year at how many objects were being launched to space, with close to 42% year-over-year increase. We're seeing the dawn of self-optimizing missions, satellites that can diagnose themselves, networks that reconfigure autonomously, and systems that make split-second decisions without waiting on anybody from Earth to tell them what to do. And what I'm trying to do today is move beyond the buzzwords of AI agents, and all the things that I'm sure you've been hearing about in the news, to examine how AI is really actually changing the architectures in space and business models, and what you all as decision makers in our industry can glean from that to really experience the next breakthroughs going forward. So on that note, let's start with a few questions for our panelists. First one. How do you envision artificial intelligence transforming spacecraft and constellations from reactive platforms into proactive, self-optimizing assets? And what will a truly predictive and self-learning satellite network look like by the end of this decade? Who would like to go first? Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay. Does that work?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so this is like a really interesting time, because what we're seeing with all this new space, right, we are having, we talked this morning about multi-orbit constellations, right? Satellite operators having to manage these multi-orbit constellations, having to deal with software-defined satellites, having to deal with also non-terrestrial networks, blending all these together. But when you look at the way the processes have been done in the past, it's nearly impossible for a human to be able to manage these complex network architectures. I mean, just think about it, like the interference that you can have from LEO, MEO satellites, and those are transient effects, ad hoc happening. So how can you deliver service to the end customer reliably and providing that end user satisfaction that they expect? So one way we're looking at it at iDirect is how do we leverage AI to be able to do predictive analytics and work towards automation. So we have started an initiative about a year ago where we have, we have a vision. We want to move towards autonomous networks. And, it's a good vision because it builds momentum, it drives business. And we're breaking it into different steps, right? We have started with anomaly detection. What happened in the network, right? Trying to answer that question. And that already gives a lot of proactivity to the satellite operator service providers, because now they can focus on troubleshooting. They can know where to troubleshoot, where to focus their activities. And the next thing we look at is the diagnostics, right? The root cause analysis. What's the most likely thing that happened in the network? And again, that allows for even more proactivity. And then we move forward to do some predictive analytics, what might happen in the future. So by taking those actions, then we're moving towards making recommendations, always with the satellite operator in the loop. And actually, if you guys have time, tonight there is a webinar with one of our partners, QCon. They have shared with us satellite operational data, and it was really interesting because we were able to find an anomaly in their network. It was a silent problem before it happened. And so when you look at that, that saved them about probably 30% impact in throughput, and they were able to be proactive about it. So we're really excited about the findings and what we're doing with the predictive analytics, moving towards automation at some point. But there is a lot of challenges that need to be overcome, and I'm excited to talk about it later.
Wow, that's awesome, and thank you for including the example of how it's helped your customers with 30% improvement on anomaly detection. And I'm hoping that with more and more AI being built in here, that we can avoid these anomalies altogether going forward. So it'll move away from discussions about how do we do predictive analytics that would predict a failure mode to how do we make it like that much more operationally effective going forward. But did you want to say something, Behzad?
Yeah, just wanted to add topic. So right now there's about 40,000 objects in space, roughly, right? A quarter of that is satellites that are active satellites that are moving around. And as you mentioned, the cost of launch is coming down, and there would be more constellations that are going to be active by end of the decade. If we look at these constellations, they need to have an autonomous kind of connectivity between themselves, right? So in addition to the anomaly that you mentioned, these satellites, as they're going around the orbit in LEO, MEO, and GEO, they would need to have those connectivities between themselves and kind of manage their the constellations, these mega constellations that we're talking. Right now, most of the design has been done on the past base, where you have several satellites in orbit and not a lot. But as you grow 100 plus satellites in these constellations, you need to have those AI-enabled orchestration between them to coordinate, because that human in the loop is no longer going to be an option, and this is inevitable. We have to use that capability, because not only for anomaly detection, but also for getting the customer what they need, the best performance in terms of understanding the weather characteristic, in understanding the solar panel requirements that are needed in one orbital plane, and basically using that data for the rest of the constellation. These are examples where you can use AI for mega constellations.
Thank you. I agree 100%. And do you have any metrics or examples that you can say of how that's changed the way we can architect constellations going forward? For example, like now, instead of having one operator operate X number of satellites, now you can have one operator operate Y, hundreds more, or no operator at all. Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, I'll just talk about on behalf of like Sidus and what we're doing. So we are building a mini constellation, what we call a LizzieSat constellation, where it has right now 3 satellites in orbit, and we are adding 2 more in 2026. So right now the operations are done, mostly the mission operations are done on the ground stations, but we do have a product, what we call the Feher Edge, that is an AI ML capability where those satellites can communicate as well as get the data from the sensors that are on board, and basically process them in almost real time, and do those predictive analysis.
Awesome, thank you. Should we go to the next question?
Okay.
Did you want to say something?
Maybe I can share about the AI used in the satellite communication. I think this is very important, because maybe in the right now more than 10,000 satellites on the space, not only include the LEO, but also include the MEO and the GEO. I think for the ground facility, maybe AI technology can help us the more smart connectivity. For example, like AI on satellite network, maybe we can, based on the specific device, based on the GPU or other computing device, help us smart to change the orbit connection and manage the traffic. I think this is the first step. Maybe in the future, we can use the AI in RAN. Maybe we based on a specific modem, based on specific antenna control unit, combined with the AI algorithm to more smart switch LEO connection or MEO connection, but also GEO connection. I think AI is many things we can do. However, I think the most challenge is the computing and how to work efficiency. I think this is the next step we should overcome. This is maybe part of the opportunity to share to everybody.
Thank you.
Can I share an outsider's perspective on this as well? So,
please.
So my background has been more on the manufacturing, consumer goods, insurance, financial services space, and I've leveraged technology, including AI, to drive change and transformation in those industries quite a lot. And now at AWS, I talk with companies across the board. So I'll bring a little bit of an external perspective. What I've seen happen over the last few years is industry after industry have found opportunity when they're faced with a disruptive situation. they find ways to first to focus on cost reduction, efficiency improvement, but eventually to figure out new ways to meet the needs of the customer by leveraging all kinds of technology. AI is one of them, but there are many others. What I see happening in the space satellite space is, I think, very disruptive. I love what earlier was said about capacity is now no longer the constraint. Always we've had capacity as a constraint, and therefore there was a lot of value in delivering capacity. What's changing now is the value-added services that will be built on top of commodity capacity is where success will happen. And therefore, it becomes very important to whatever operations you've got on top of that capacity are very efficiently run, but even more importantly, how can we more deeply understand the needs of the end customer? If it's in oil and gas, or if it's in agriculture, et cetera, there are different needs there. How do we more deeply understand that and create solutions that meet those needs dramatically differently, that allows for value creation to happen and that layer to pay off? I think that's where the opportunity is, and therefore the power of AI in being able to run your operations efficiently as well as to create that differentiating layer is significant. And I've seen that happen over the last few years, of course, in manufacturing, consumer goods, insurance, banking, where industries are transformed, and the players that play that role of delivering efficiency and customer experience have stood apart from the ones that haven't. So I see that same dynamic starting to play out here, and my encouragement would be to think about how to do that.
No, that's a really interesting point. And just from your experience at AWS, have you seen the use of AI allow you to cross-pollinate from one industry to another more effectively?
Absolutely. The example I'll start with perhaps is with our sister organization, so Amazon, the retail business. Mm-hmm. Amazon, the retail business, you would all appreciate, leverages AI massively for all of the supply chain that you see in the fulfillment centers, to the Apple app that you would use to identify the product you want to buy, sort through the billions of reviews that exist, et cetera. So there's a lot of AI that's there. What AWS then does, a big part of what we do is also help our customers understand how customers of AWS, like Amazon, mm-hmm. are leveraging this and reapply that in many other areas. So you could be a logistics provider, you could be a transportation company, and there are learnings from across these industries on predicting traffic needs, demands, preparing for that, using robotics in your operations to simplify and automate work. So there are a massive number of examples where that cross-industry fertilization happens. Another example is payments. So because Amazon is such a big retailer, there's a lot of work we do on the payments infrastructure, and that then gets cross-fertilized with banking, the payments industry, cross-border settlements, et cetera. So there are lots of examples where that happens.
Interesting, thank you. So bringing it back to space, my second question is, so mission planning today has largely been very static, human-driven, with humans in the loop. How close are we to AI-assisted mission co-design, where satellites, payloads, and ground systems dynamically negotiate objectives and reallocate resources in real time? And what net effect will that have? Like, for example, would it allow a hosted payload platform instead of 2 payloads to host 30 or 50? Or, what other dynamics will that bring going forward? Who'd like to take that question?
Take a stab at it. I mean, it's interesting. Again, very complex network architectures, and how do you dynamically allocate resources to deliver that end user experience? Doing it manually or the way it's been done in the past, it's not, that approach is reaching its limits. So we're looking at, there is a first stepping stone that we are doing where we need to have a very tight integration between the space segment and the ground segment. So we're working with partners right now to develop a radio resource controller API that allows that interaction. But on top of that, you need to add that AI layer to help automate those processes and foresee events before they happen, so you can reallocate resources. You could have, for example, we've been working on a use case where you could have a, let's say, a LEO terminal on a vessel, and you have also a GEO terminal on a vessel, and there is bad weather that is happening, and you may not be able to maintain the quality of experience on that LEO terminal. So the ability to make those predictions and having the ground segment interact directly with the payload will make that happen. But I think, from what we see is there is a technical challenge, but also what's really important is for these AI processes, for this to be effective, it cannot be just bolted on existing operational processes, right? It has to be, you have to revisit the operational processes, and AI has to be in the DNA of those processes. Otherwise, we see challenges with silos between the different players in the ecosystem. This is where we have started this advisory automation council, where we are promoting right now to have different players from the ecosystem align on the approach to take from a data governance perspective, from a data federation perspective. How do we go about having AI as a co-design, working side by side with the network operators? So I'd be very happy to talk to you guys about it, or feel free to reach out to Terry Blakely if we can discuss how to be part of that consortium.
And just to follow up on that, do you think any kind of cultural changes need to happen in order to get to that realization, or do you think we're set up properly for that? Because I feel there is some resistance in our
thank you for bringing that up.
in our ecosystem to this adoption.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that, Negar. It's really actually important to have that cultural change. We are seeing it it has to. You need to have executive sponsorship, and it's got to go from the top to bottom and bottom to top in the organization. And what we saw, or we noticed, we had actually a report from McKinsey where they upskilled. They looked at companies upskilling their teams with AI, and what was interesting is after they got trained, they saw 30% loss again in productivity from their teams, because they were not using AI after a couple of months as they should be. So what was important from a cultural change is to have actually coaches in teams that are driving that cultural change, so it's really adopted. We all use ChatGPT, those type of tools, but not used to the extent where it should go.
Thank you.
I would like to add, so we talked about the space side. Let's talk about the ground side. Building a ground station and putting that infrastructure in place is very expensive, right? And it puts a lot of effort on the operator to run and have those ground stations which communicates with the space. So usually we've seen that there's some percentage of those ground stations that are sitting idle at some times, given the passes that are going over these ground stations. What AI can do, and it's being done, there are capabilities where you can utilize these ground stations based on the weather patterns that the satellites are seeing, or the ground stations are basically forecasting, and using those ground stations full capacity can enable to have a constant communication link between what we are collecting in space and we want to bring it down, or vice versa. That is going to be very essential. And right now there are companies that are working on those applications, and utilizing those resources is going to be essential, because I think when you look at the bigger picture here is that how can AI help us to solve the challenges that we have. We don't want to always go and use those limited resources that we have. We want to utilize the capabilities, and that's where that example can be used. And then talking about the culture change, I think the technology is there, right? There's no lack of technology. It's the mentality and acceptance of, are we going to give that capability to and get the human out of the loop, right? Give that capability and trust it, right? So trust and verify that, make sure that works. I mean, it can be in a smaller scale, but now we are going to use it in bigger scales as we get more constellations up in the space.
Absolutely. You wanted to say something here.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of add a little bit on both the questions. One on the use case of negotiation you mentioned, and then also the culture aspect. Mm-hmm. So before that, I just want to share. I know AI is a lot of buzz on it, but I wanted to clarify one aspect of which is, I think, is getting a lot of businesses excited now. Now, historically, AI was really good at predicting a trend and then allowing you to make a decision based on that prediction, right? But it was always a rule-based decision, right? That if the prediction shows this much with so much confidence limit, then take this action. But in the kind of challenges that is in this industry, a lot of these things cannot be rule-based. They require some degree of judgment, and you can't exactly define the rule in a way that can be programmed. That's why there's so much dependence still on humans in the loop. What the latest forms of AI allow you to do is be able to take some of that judgment and automate that judgment as well.
Absolutely.
Now, the important thing I want to mention there is that a lot of people, it can scare folks saying, oh, are you going to automate judgment? But the reality of the thing is that in situations where you're constrained by human capacity to take that split-second decisions on a ground station, Passover being wasted, and how to optimize that, you take very specific situations like that and figure out a way to harness that judgment at scale to get a lot more value from the asset that you've got. Those are the opportunities. And from the culture point of view, what I have seen working across multiple industries and businesses now is leaders who develop that level of understanding of what is the capability of this thing now and which problems that I have right now that can be solved well with it, and invest to build their organization capacity and capability to address those kind of problems are the ones that are successful. Including the question you're talking about, it's always useful to start with very simple stuff. A very simple thing that every business, every industry has is accounts payable, for instance, right? And we've got situations where now 2 trading partners are using agentic systems to do negotiations on pricing changes based on inflation data. So that routine changes like that in long-term contracts can be automated more and more, and you're not holding supplies because someone needs to take a look at this contract again as the underlying inflation changes. So that's an example. In the space industry, of course, there will be others like that, but I think these are opportunities where we can get more speed, better customer experience, and more efficiencies by automating judgment in very targeted areas where that's been a constraint.
Oh, absolutely. And just to add an example of a space operation of that is typically when we do mission planning, we set out the expert systems rules of, if this happens to the propulsion system, then do Y. If this happens to the solar array and, you're seeing transfer levels at this, then do Z. And if we can automate all of this using AI and with split-second judgments, we can run everything so much more efficiently and focus the operators on what actually moves the business and moves the needle forward in terms of creating profits. So I'm predicting it'll provide exponential growth for all of you. All right, so I want to switch a little bit. One of you guys brought up the topic of trust. And I think this is, essential when it comes to AI. A lot of people don't trust it. They think it hallucinates. It's, not something that can easily replace a human in the loop. So think of it as AI assumes more control over critical operations. And what frameworks can ensure that we have the transparency, accountability, and verification? And how can we design autonomous systems that are both self-governing and auditable, especially in defense and dual-use contexts? And how can we do this going forward? And I'm just curious to know your thoughts on this, since the topic of trust was already brought up. Please.
I think trust issue is difficult. You know why? I think we need to set a lot of the maybe key issue or about key part to make sure of the security. I think you know AI. Maybe you see the movie. Maybe AI maybe can chat everyone to do something. So I think maybe you are right. Maybe the security issue in the future maybe need to include part of the AI, because maybe we will harmful like a satellite operator or end user. So how to verify? Maybe we can use the body feature or specific feature to make sure all the security is fine. This is the first step. And the second step, maybe we need to think about introduce more security key to make sure AI will chat other people to do. I think this is maybe possibly a way to achieve. Yeah, this is my.
Thank you. Did any?
I can add to this a little bit. So the leap that we're making with the latest forms of AI is a bit like the leap we made from purely historical database rule-based decision making to predictive. Mm-hmm. Even when you build, hopefully everyone's working with predictive models, right? Even in predictive models, you're projecting into the future, and therefore there is a degree of variability between what the prediction is, what the actual thing turns out to be. Hallucination is another word for that, in a way. It's the error from the prediction to the actual. Okay. And we have developed mechanisms to deal with that error rate in predictive analytics. The same approach is essentially being extended now to more agentic and generative AI-based systems as well. So the idea essentially is that what it's doing is it's predicting the most likely plan, mm-hmm. and there are ways to verify that plan matches with what a reasonable person would come up with. At AWS, we have these mechanisms called automated reasoning, which what it does is you ask the AI to come up with a plan, which it will execute, and then there's a separate model that breaks that plan down into a series of steps and uses mathematical models and logic to verify that that's the right outcome. So this is one way to achieve a degree of confidence. The other aspect, again, is a bit cultural as well. With what's possible with AI, especially with agentic systems, now the mindset also has to shift from writing code which is rule-based to almost like working with a team of experts. Mm-hmm. So think about when you're assembling a team for your mission planning, you would bring in people who have some degree of, let's say, college education or some experience, but you will then start by giving them instructions, standard operating procedures, standards, regulatory requirements, all of those things. In effect, you're giving context to people so that they can make the right decisions. In many ways, agentic systems need similar context, and the better, cleaner, and more useful context you provide, the better their judgment and ability to plan and take actions will be. And like any organizational situation, you start with giving training and context to your people, but then you don't leave them aside and let them do whatever they're doing with no verification and observing. So same thing, you give context to your agents, initially keep a human in the loop, observe how they're performing, and fine-tune the context. Over time, you will build up the level of confidence that they're taking a decision that a human team member would have taken, and that's when you take the human out of the loop. So these are very established mechanisms to build, validate, and then put these systems into production that need to be used with new forms of AI as well.
Thank you. Very, very insightful. And it kind of reminds me of like with autonomous cars, how we initially started with the driver having to sit there, you know, while the car is driving autonomous, you're just watching it like Waymo did, and now they're not there anymore. We're going to get to that in space soon, hopefully. Since we have less than 5 minutes left, I'm just going to ask one last question, and then we can go through the audience questions quickly. Sorry we didn't get through everything I wanted to, but if we fast forward to 2030, what single AI-enabled milestone would mark the true transformation of the space industry in your view? Like, would it be autonomous constellation coordination, self-healing infrastructure, fully adaptive mission networks, or something else? I'm just curious to say, if you hand you your crystal ball, what would you say is happening in 2030? And you each get 10 seconds, since we want to get to some audience questions. And if you have audience questions, please post them on the chat so I can read them too.
I think these future mega constellations will have the capabilities to navigate between communications, Earth observations, data relay capabilities, and basically do that all autonomously and have human completely out of the loop unless it's necessary for like critical decision making. You know, so that's the way I see this is happening.
Thank you.
I would say, I mean, the way we're looking at it is, you know, we're trying to walk or even crawl before we walk, before we run. Self-healing, definitely automating some workflows, but we still see by 2030, a human will still be in the loop until that trust and confidence is built naturally. But for this to work is really, we have to build the system from the ground up, right? All the players in the ecosystem have to align on how we're going to implement AI. And, you know, we look at like even the data blueprints. We have to align on that. There is an interesting framework we're looking at from the TM forum that, you know, the telcos are a little bit ahead in the way they are implementing AI, and that framework looks very applicable. Especially now with the integration of 5G and such, it would be good to maybe leverage some of that.
Thank you.
I think the previous I mentioned about maybe AI in rain is very important. AI in satellites is very important. So we need to consider how to combine with AI technology in the baseband or other satellite operator invading use the AI technology. I think it will let the constellation working it well with the AI. Yeah.
I'm from outside the industry, so I can't quite project, but what I'm hoping is the outcome. So this is an inflection point in the industry, I think. Mm-hmm. And my hope as an end user of this is that this leads to that value-added layer that solves some really big problems around, you know, food safety, climate, weather prediction, etc., that makes the lives of all of us much better.
Thank you. So since we have less than a minute left, I'll ask you this question, Arvind, really quickly, and we won't get to the second question. The question from the audience is Amazon Kuiper combining satellite connectivity with AWS cloud services as an end-to-end service a massive advantage over Starlink, which will only offer raw connectivity? Can you speak to that?
Kuiper, I can't quite speak to that. Kuiper and AWS are two separate divisions. We're not truly really connected. We do partner in some ways, but I don't know the specific answer to that question.
Okay. All right, maybe we can chat about that. So I'd like to close this panel because we're out of time, unfortunately, but thank you for participating and your questions. And, you know, in closing, I just want to say, you know, right now, if your satellite is still, you know, calling home before it can make a massive decision, imagine it's still a teenager. And it's with AI, it's finally going to get the opportunity to grow up and be independent. So that's what I see happening circa 2030 and hopefully even earlier. So we grow up all of our systems from teenagers into adults and expand our ecosystem that way. But thank you all. And I'm going to hand it back to the conference organizers. Thank you, panelists, for joining me.
Thank you, Negar, and thank you, panelists.